Hello, and thank you for sticking with us through this amazing conference. I, again, am Benzi Kluger. I'm the president of the International Neuropalliative Care Society. I'm also the chair of our meeting committee. And it is my pleasure and honor both to say hello to you at the beginning of the conference and now live, actually, to see you out. I'm going to share my slides and we'll go over the amazing talks that we saw, including the last two talks from Brian and Randy, which were really inspirational and a great note to end the conference on. So just to go through on day one, I launched the conference on our theme this year, which is the importance of breaking barriers and building community to improve care. And went through 13 different suggestions of areas that we could target for improving neuropalliative care. And I was really heartened to see how these themes were echoed in the talks that follow. But I think some of the main take-home points here is really about expanding our vision for what various people's roles are, and particularly expanding the vision of what patient and caregivers' role are and how they could be much more actively involved to improve care, to improve research, to improve education. Also for us to reimagine what the role of neuropalliative care healthcare providers are, not just in providing care, but also in providing coaching and education to others. And echoing talks from today of the importance of going outside the medical model to think about the social determinants of health and the roles of the community in terms of providing support for people living with neurologic illnesses. Our Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Kathleen Foley, her talk really blew me away, just the scope of it in terms of looking at the work that the World Health Assembly and Human Rights Watch have done in making palliative care a human rights and making palliative care really an international issue that they are tackling on a nation-by-nation basis. And I took copious notes from this and am going to be doing a lot of thinking and a lot of work of how do we document the scope of suffering and how do we make plans on local levels, on community levels, and on national levels to address this suffering and to address it, I think, very fairly, as Dr. Foley said, as a human rights issue, that not treating and not preventing suffering that is treatable and preventable really is a form of torture and is something that we need to take very, very seriously. Jennifer Seidman's work and my conversation with her was also very inspiring. Walk with Me, accompanying families caring for children with serious illness. And it was really great to hear of how her and the Courageous Parents Network has come together to support parents on this very difficult journey. It was a very poignant talk to me. I think some of the key questions that came out of this were asking parents, what does it mean to you to be a good parent? And then to ask the health system, to ask ourselves as community of what we can do to better support people along that way. I apologize. Okay. Phone will not shut off. Throw it in a filing cabinet. But anyway, that her work with the Courageous Parents Network was really inspiring and really got me thinking, not just for children and their parents, but also for older adults, for people whose partners have dementia, of how can we support those people in being the best parent and being the best partner and being the best spouse and being the best child possible. The Outstanding Scientific Contribution Award went to Laura Hansen this year, and I really could think of no person more deserving. And her talk builds on really a lifetime of amazing work. And I think, again, targets us and inspires us in the title, Guided by Suffering. And that really needs to be our target. And how do we design neuropalliative care interventions that will be able to address this suffering. This was followed, and the next day on Friday was started with a panel discussion on practical implementation of palliative care. And it was a very cool discussion with colleagues from North America, colleagues from South America, and from Europe. And there was a very wide range of experiences talked about. I'd highlight two that Laura in Chile talked about her work and very collaborative work of palliative care doctors, neurologists, and others coming together to be able to provide neuropalliative care. And they're very much at the beginning of their journey. And I would say on the opposite end of the spectrum in some ways was Stefan Lorenzel reporting on how neuropalliative care is working in Germany. And in that case, they are having, I think, quite a bit of government support and other support to make this happen. I'm going to pause for a second to throw my phone out of the room. Technology has never been my friend, so I apologize again about that. But for Stefan's work has been really, I think truly amazing and inspiring. And we saw some posters of the first neuropalliative care unit, which came from Germany, and also some, I think, amazing thoughts and ideas of how neuropalliative care providers can use telemedicine to support people at a distance, even though that we won't be able to support all patients directly. And I think this gets to an important thing for the global perspective is just that there's a limited number of neuropalliative care experts and there's a limited workforce. And so I think we all need to be creative in terms of thinking about palliative care from a public health perspective and how do we meet this. Our advocate of the year is Susan Schneider-Williams. And again, I couldn't think of a more appropriate person to award. And we saw the movie together, Robin's Wish. We had the opportunity to talk to her and Tyler, the director of the film, and then speak to Susan again the next day. And I think she does just a magnificent job and shows a lot of courage and bravery and wisdom in her approach to advocacy. It was very cool to hear about the journey of the film before it was made. Really amazing to hear about how Robin's Wish is now in 60 countries, how they have had 26 pages of times where they've spoken to groups not unlike ours. And I think part of that is that the story of the importance of diagnosis, the story of all of the non-motor symptoms, the psychiatric symptoms, the emotional pain, the caregiver strain, is just a really important story that has, to date, not really been talked about on such a public scale. And I think the public's love of Robin Williams really makes him an amazing, even after death, an amazing spokesperson for pushing this work and pushing this agenda forward. Messaging Principles for Serious Illness by Tony Bach and Marion Grant. Again, very inspiring, very thought-provoking. And one of the things I really liked was their mixed methods approach and taking an evidence-based approach to how do we need to message serious illness. And I think some of the things that they brought back to us and that I think that we need to think about very seriously is one, how much does the public trust us? And how can we build that trust over time? Two is really to focus on the positive aspects of palliative care and to use positive images, positive messages, positive stories, and then to be prepared that this is going to be an ongoing dialogue, that we are not going to explain neuropalliative care once, even twice, dozens of times. We're going to need to do this for both patients, families, and healthcare providers in order to make it stick and in order to see some real and significant change. They also shared a website, which I'm excited to look at and work with on serious illness messaging. And I think, again, from the little bit I have explored with that website, just a lot of very thoughtful and great tools that we can apply in the world of neuropalliative care. The State of Neuropalliative Science address provided an overview of some of the key and best studies from 2022, and those were presented by David Wang. And then Anna Maria Vrantino went over, I think, a very far-reaching and inspiring vision for where we need to go, and brought up some very provocative concepts, including thinking about not just patient-directed research, but dyadic research, things that are directed to a patient and a caregiver together, and even triadic research, where we include the clinician and we think about that triad of individuals and doing interventions that target that triad. I think also a compelling idea was to think about transdiagnostic interventions, possibly palliative care interventions that are targeting symptoms or issues and that span across multiple different neurologic illnesses. And I think this is a very pragmatic suggestion because it does reflect how palliative care and neuropalliative care is practiced in the real world. The Tara Cook Award was awarded, I think, very appropriately to Amberine Mehta, and it was great to hear from her, and great to really see and hear all of the great work that she's done at one time, which is significant and spans a lot of education, both for residents and fellows, as well as to our fellow healthcare providers. There was also thoughtful discussion about how we do different models of care using the example of ALS, and how we may be able to use social media as a way to further promote neuropalliative care. And I would say that her work at Johns Hopkins is truly inspirational, in that they've done work with the internal medicine program, as well as with the neurocritical care fellowship, that I think really should be a model that we all strive to reproduce in our local centers for really integrating palliative care education into our education of healthcare providers. Finally, getting to today, Saturday, Compassionate Communities in Neuropalliative Care Symposium was, again, I think every talk to me has been inspiring, has been jaw-dropping in many ways, and this was no exception. I think Alan's really imperative to us to see that palliative care is everybody's responsibility, and his promotion of this idea of compassionate communities, and whether that is on a large scale as a compassionate city, or whether that's on a small scale, for instance, a compassionate neighborhood, a compassionate business, a compassionate school, I think really speaks to, again, getting outside of the strict medical model and getting outside of our roles as just healthcare providers, and thinking about what everybody's role is in supporting individuals living with serious neurologic illness. Libby presented a great overview of the very important Lancet paper on the value of death and dying, and how do we incorporate that, and how do we integrate that into really into society, and into communities, and into our work as healthcare providers on a very large scale. And I think brought up some very provocative statements, including, for example, making sure that we think about and we address dying not simply as a physiological event, but as a spiritual issue. And that there is a lot of value in having conversations about this, and supporting people on the spiritual journey, and in making sure that we integrate this into the work that we do, both inside of medicine as well as out in our communities. And lastly, great to hear from Suresh and the really amazing work that's been done in India, in the state of Kerala, and how they have done a volunteer program to be able to provide really high quality palliative care. And very interestingly, 30% of the palliative care that they provide is to people with neurologic disorders. And so I'm always fascinated, I'm always interested, I'm always awestruck by how that works. And I think in the Q&A session that followed with Roop Gursahani, one of the things that I was really struck by was that the motivation for volunteers is not money, it's not even paying it forward, but it's just really integrating into how caring for each other is part of what we need to do for our neighbors and for our community. And so really inspiring, and ties back into some of Alan's initial charges of how this work can happen and how it can be sustainable, really building on the goodness of people's hearts and compassion. Our poster showcase this year was amazing, and I'm not going to go through every poster. I would just say that on the whole, that we have a new generation of investigators who are articulate and well-spoken, and they are doing very important work in a diverse set of areas. And we're going to hear a lot more from all of these investigators in the coming years. It was, really, for me, just again, great to hear, from people all over the world, how they're thinking about neuropalliative care, how they're thinking about applying it, what new gaps they're seeing in care, and also new ideas for how we can start to address those gaps. And I would encourage everybody to check out their posters, but also the other posters, which were really wonderful, and like everything else in this meeting, I think inspiring and thought-provoking. And lastly, engaging as an advocate, heard a wonderful talk and question and answer session with Randy LeBlanc, and his path from the time of diagnosis, which, as I think one of our questions from the audience was, was it really a textbook case of how not to give a diagnosis? And Randy talked about his advice for advocates and for how we can and should start to integrate neuropalliative care, not just within Parkinson's, but I think very importantly, he brought out that we start to collect our resources, and that we align Parkinson's and ALS and everybody who is dealing with serious neurologic illness together to try to improve care. And that's really speaks to the heart of our neuropalliative care mission. And then I couldn't think of a better talk to end this session on, or end this conference with. Brian Wallach, just a very inspirational talk. And I think his words, "You have the power to change the system," is such an important message, that all of us who are here listening have the power to change the systems that we are working in, to make sure that they are truly compassionate, and that they are really meeting the needs of people living with neurologic illnesses, their families, and the people who care for them. For people who are interested for continuing education, I just want to let you know that over the next few days, you'll receive an email with a link to a post-conference survey. Upon completion of the survey, you'll receive a certificate showing your earned continuing education credits. Even for people who are not needing continuing education, I would really ask people to complete the survey, because we are very interested to know what you liked about this year's meeting, what you'd like to see more of, what you didn't like about this year's meeting, any ideas or thoughts or suggestions you have for future speakers, future themes, other things that we can do are very welcome. And also to think about that in future years, we're going to have a hybrid meeting, including an in-person component. So definitely feel free to fill out that survey, but if you have other thoughts or ideas, definitely please email us, and we're very interested to hear from you as our members and as attendees of this meeting to learn how we can do a better job. I'd also very much like to thank our sponsors for this meeting. We could not have done it without them. CND Life Sciences, the Lewy Body Dementia Association, the ALS Golden West Chapter Association, also in-kind sponsors of the Courageous Parents Network and Vital Talk, and our friends of the Society, iThera Medical, and me over PD. Thank you so much for your support of this meeting and for your ongoing support of our work. I would also like to just let you know that there are a lot of people to thank. Our partners at GMP, particularly Brennan and Brooklyn, have been instrumental in making this meeting happen. The INPCS meeting committee has been working tirelessly, and we'll be meeting next week, actually, and to continue our tireless work in trying to make sure that these meetings are as inspirational as possible, as instructional as possible. I would like to thank my fellow officers, our board of director, and all of our INPCS committee chairs. Again, all of this society is really instrumental in making this meeting happen, and I'm feel just so much gratitude, so honored to be able to work with so many amazing people for such an important cause. And to end, I will reveal that we do have a location and a date for next year's meeting. It will be a hybrid meeting. For those of you who are not able to make it in person. And so drum roll, please. We invite you to join us in person September 12th through 15th, 2023 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm very, very excited about seeing people in person, some of whom I have not seen since the beginning of the pandemic, but I think this will really be a key step in building community. Seeing people in person. We'll be as creative as we can with making a hybrid meeting. We'll do our best to find sponsors, to get scholarships, to get people together. But I see this as a very important step on our journey towards building this society. And it's amazing that, in just 3 years, we've done so much great work. I hope all of you who are attending have left as inspired and energized as I am from this great meeting and just amazing speakers. So we look forward to seeing you in the very near future. And we will be in touch. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until then, you have the power.